Okie doke.
Okay. So so last week, I guess it was, you told me some funny ideas about I think the way you advertised it to me was that it was about sort of Coxeter groups and just intonation. And that's not completely inaccurate, but I will probably complain slightly about it. But that's what I'm trying to follow up on here. And I guess one of the things that really came up was this thing that some people call sounds like some sort of German word. What does this German word mean? How does that parse? Is that a German word?
It's pronounced Tonnetz. So you say tone like tone, which is good.
Yes.
And it means tone net, or maybe tone network, I think.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, right. I mean, that was sort of the obvious guess, but I wasn't really sure. As usual, I've got slightly the wrong grid here. In that it's traditional to draw the Tonnetz as a, I was going to say hexagonal grid, but hexagonal-ish, but it's more, let's see, like it has hexagonal symmetry, but it's like a triangular, it's one of those triangular grids, not a honeycomb picture exactly, although we may massage it to make it look more like thing or something like that. And so all right, so let me even get any of this to make sense to myself. So let's say we've got well, let's call it F for now, unless we can come up with some better name for it. So I'm just calling it F for frequencies of sounds, the frequency spectrum. So I'm thinking of that, as going from, sort of visualizing as this piano keyboard, going infinitely to left and infinitely to the right. So so I have to think about that. So that's got a sort of affine structure on it. It's like an affine vector space. But I'm not sure if, well, I mean, there may be better ways to rearrange this. I mean, the affine structure is given by the, what do I call it? I mean, like the midpoint of two frequencies is the geometric mean of the frequencies. And so it's like approaching zero frequency at the left bass side of the keyboard, of the piano keyboard, and it's approaching positive infinity frequency at the right treble side of the piano keyboard, and it's only approaching those limits. It's not reaching any of those limits. Even if it were an infinite keyboard, it still wouldn't. It does. Okay, so I'm calling that F, and it's just an affine vector space. But maybe if I pick a favorite tonic or something, then it becomes a vector space. And I'm not sure we should really do that, but or I could also use the vector space of translations on this affine vector space. How should we do this? Should we pick our favorite tonal center?
I don't want to get too fussy about it until, well, especially before you tell me what you're going to do.
Okay. Yeah. So okay, yeah, that's a good idea. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to have Z squared having some sort of homomorphism. So
so anyway, it's probably more familiar to people if you treat both of these as groups. So give them a specific tonic. I mean, you don't have to, but
well,
until we want to polish everything up.
I'm going to think of it as ratios. I'm going to think of it as intervals, relative intervals, or something like that. So ratios relative or something like that. So I will unless we come up with some preferable thing, something like that. So I'll just think of it as I guess I'll think of it as GL1 R, or is it R plus? I guess it's R plus. Is that right?
Yep.
Is that a good place to? Well,
which is very similar to R plus.
Maybe I should say something like that. Something like that. Is that really right? So that's that interval of frequency ratios. Right. So as soon as you can just pick a tonal center and say that is our origin, and then you can think of these relative things as absolute things if you violently pick a tonal center. Okay. So maybe I should instead of thinking of this as the Cartesian square, maybe I should think of it as the direct double. Let me make that look a little bit better.
Okay.
It's Z plus Z. I want to emphasize that it's Z plus Z rather than Z cross Z, just because I want to hom out of this into the other thing. So I just have to give this direct double is free on two generators, which maybe I'll call M and M or something like that. Pretty rare for me to use the case sensitivity, but it's major and minor is what I'm thinking of it. Is there better?
Major and minor thirds, do you mean? Or
yeah, these are major and minor thirds, yeah.
Okay.
So
it's fine with me.
And we haven't necessarily decided yet exactly which homomorphism we're dealing with here, because there are different tuning systems give different plausible things. So for example, we have one homomorphism where M is don't tell me 5/4, and the minor, the major thing is 5/4, and the minor thing is 6/5, and that's called just intonation. And there's this thing. I don't know. I'm just making up silly letters here to use. Maybe we'll use better letters or something here. We're just going to call it P for a perfect fifth or something like that. P is defined to be equal. Major and a minor thing together. Just that, it's not an independent basis element. And
for our readers, I'll remind them that you multiply those numbers to add them.
Okay, how do we deal with that? Okay.
Well, I mean, at least when they get mapped over to numbers, you can maybe you want to write plus in the abstract Z plus Z, but then you're describing their images in this multiplicative group. So Makes sense. Did he multiply 5/4 and 6/5?
Oh, yes. Okay, sure. No, that's good. Right. M and N. Right. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So that is that. I mean, I'll probably get in trouble with this later, but for now, that works out fine. If I knew how to do this, I would just move it over there, but I'm not that good at doing that, so I'm just going to rewrite it. So it's what over here we have P, over on the left-hand side, it's P equals perfect fifth. P stands for perfect fifth is equal to a major third plus a minor third. But what's the, I didn't leave enough room for the other one. So what's the other major one we're going to have? What do we call that? We just call it 12 tone or something like that.
They call it 12 tet. 12 tone equal temperament. Equal temperament is one good name.
Equal temperament. All right, let's just call it okay, yeah, let's call it equal temperament for a moment.
Or equal tempered, or if you want an adjective.
Well, I wrote the other one as a noun phrase, so
it's true. It's true.
Equal.
I don't ever know how. Sometimes I say just intoned, and it sounds pretentious. Not pretentious, portentous.
Again, maybe I should put a subscript of a 12 for equal temperament, but it's pretty traditional, so I'll just leave it there. Say the pretentious. I just want to hear the pretentious thing again. Say it.
It was portentous, not pretentious. The adjective
pretentious. That's why I wanted to hear you say it. But okay.
Yeah. Well, it's all maybe. What's the adjectival form of just intonation? I sometimes are tempted now to say just intoned, but that's
just intoned.
But intoned,
that's weird to me.
That sounds like you're having some Kabbalistic ritual or something like that.
Okay. And don't tell me unless I can figure out what that one is. So this would be yeah, by some weird coincidence, this would be right. This is one of those funny, or this is a couple of those funny Diophantine approximations. Are they really called Diophantine approximations? There's some kind of approximations. This is 1 to the.
I think you've gone over to the complex numbers now there. I would say it's 2 to something.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
That's for the second part of the talk.
I'm not sure what kind of joke that was. 2 to the, don't tell me. 2 to the, okay, yeah, 2 to the 1/3. It reminds you of like an augmented triad. If you just start piling up these equal temperament major thirds on top of each other, you know, and think of it as periodic with respect to normal octaves, then you know it gets you back to the octave after 3 of them. Whereas if you do that with the minor thirds, you fit 4 of them in there, and it's a diminished 7th. Am I saying that right?
What? What's a
diminished 7th chord? What?
Oh, if you hit all of them, yeah, yeah.
If you just start piling minor thirds, equal temperament minor thirds on top of each other,
yeah.
Then
the coincidence is that a third is a third of an octave. Is that the coincidence you know?
That's one of the coincidences, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, don't that'll ruin anybody who's just trying to learn harmony theory. Yeah.
Is there another weird coincidence that bugs me here? Let's see. Well, there are all sorts of weird coincidences, but okay. So okay, and then you know we could just use the grids we could use this grid that's my background. What's the word I'm looking for here? The background, the graphic background here, this square grid, instead of the triangular grid. But let's see. So
I discovered that this square grid has its own separate name, and there's an own separate Wikipedia article about it. Somebody pointed.
Let's not go into this too far. But what's the name?
I don't know. I'll look it up, but I forget.
I consider it the same thing, sort of.
Yeah, I know, it's sort of weird. Anyway, never mind. I'll look it up, but yeah.
Okay, so you know, I'm you know, we could have it be like, you know, this would be the origin, you know, the unit ratio, and this could be capital M, and then I guess for normal people, they would write the second one up here. I would usually write it the other way, but and yeah, so and then right. So in this quadrant, in this first quadrant, you would get only rising intervals, right? Yeah. And in the opposite quadrant, you get only descending intervals. In the other two quadrants, you get,
well, there would be some slanted, yeah, you get.
Say it again, what?
There'd be some slanted line of separating the.
Yeah, that's a good point. So where is the where is this low, right there? So there's a, what am I saying? There's a projection. Right, I could try to draw the right. So this homomorphism H, which could be, you know, here's the H just and the H equal, something like that. Boy, just versus equal. Okay. So I'm trying to think of the word. When you have the, you know, this homomorphism here, it's fibers. Is that the word? What am I trying to say? I want to draw these lines, you know, that would be like, you know, a major interval. You know, there's also like there's like this, and all the things parallel to that. And these red lines are the, yeah, right. So I mean, you can extend this homomorphism H from the discrete thing to the continuous thing. You could extend it to from a continuous thing to a continuous thing, and then you could draw the fibers of that linear map or something like that. And I guess that's what I'm sort of drawing here. And and again, the angles will be a little bit different if you're using the triangular thing, the equilateral triangular thing.
Can I just show you some interrupt for a second? Just
sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
I found this thing. Let's see, this is going to stop your screen.
Sure. I think you can take care of yourself. Go ahead.
Yep. So this thing is called a Fokker periodicity block, which is, it seems like it's a Tonnetz, but with so this should be pretty similar to what you're talking about, although sorry, but except that they're using the major third and the major fifth as the two generators here instead of the major third and the minor third.
Sure. I had silly preference reasons for picking minor third and major third and minor third.
So they're
But
showing it in the equal temperament here, and they're showing it in the, for some reason, they're going equal temperament here, and they're showing it in the, for some reason, they're going backwards from how the people normally do it, but here's the just, wait a minute. I don't know what they're doing. This is 8/5 here. 8/5. What's 8/5?
well, that's a 6 to 8. Let's see, 9. That maybe it could be a mistake. Let's see. 9, 6, 8. What kind of progression is that? 9, 6, 8. 9, 6, 4 is, let's see, 27.
Oh,
Let's see. Should we try to figure out what they're doing? Because they're doing something funny. Let's see.
it's weird. It's weird because I thought these were like differing just in the tuning system, but here the one is at the lower left and here it's at the lower right, and so they seem to be going backwards in one of them. And also in this one they are going up a major third and a major fifth. In this one they're going up major fifth, and I mean a perfect fifth and an 8/5. What is 8/5? Sorry, why? What's 8/5?
Well, I mean, I mean, they're not going up by the same amount.
Yeah.
It might be a typo or something, but they're not going up by the same amount. By the vertical steps, they're not going up by the same amount, but not going up by the same ratio.
The vertical steps? Oh,
yeah.
Like oh, wow. You mean they're not each within a given chart? They're not. Oh, wow. Right. Okay. That's weird. Well, maybe we shouldn't try to figure this out now. I thought it was just something sort of simple, but it's
right. There are all sorts of possibilities of what they could be doing, including, having typos. But they're probably not doing typos. They're probably just doing something in extremely poor taste. But I don't know. But okay. I get the idea of not trying to figure it out right now. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was just I thought it was just something simple. Okay, you got to regain your screen. You got to reestablish your control screen.
Okay, should be there.
Yep.
So let's see. So all right, so let's see. So I guess the way we've got it here, the P is right there. The perfect fifth. It's just the sum of those two intervals. And so that means that, if I just draw this as a slightly non-equilateral triangle thing with right triangles instead of equilateral triangles, then what is the Tonnetz going to look like? It's going to look like, that's right. Is anything like what it's going to look like? So this is really just the Tonnetz, but drawn in a slightly sheared, oblique, whatever the word is, way. So let's see. So one of the things I notice here is that when we really take seriously this just intonation thing, the way we're doing it, this image of H is dense. So if you could play anything you want to a very high approximation,
right?
But just using ridiculous choices of everything, but in particular, in order to do that, you'd be going into those second and fourth quadrants a lot, because that's where it's more dense, I think.
Yeah, there's a term called comma drift, where when you're playing in just intonation, in this sense of just intonation that you're talking about here,
comma in the sense of
syntonic commas, and so you you play a tune and then you wind up back at a different C, for example, And that's just like a major problem at a certain point in music theory history.
Yeah, right.
So they don't want it to be
issue.
dense, particular,
Right,
but
right.
it is, yeah.
Right, and that's why those those equal temperament things are attractive in some ways, because they give you very non-dense images.
Yep.
And that's in certain ways that's an attractive feature. And on the other hand, they have intervals that sound worse than the just intonations ones. So it's like a struggle, this tension, conceptual tension between these two different choices of H, these two different choices of homomorphism.
Yeah.
Trying to shift back and forth to get the benefits of both, and somehow maybe the historical conventional choices really are influenced by the fact that these two particular H's are somewhat close to each other.
Sure.
That has to do with why you pick the number 12 or.
Yep. Oh, so here's Lisa. I'm going to pause the recording.
Sure.
Okay, we're back in action.
Again, I've got these little Tonnetz pictures here, which at the moment I'm drawing them made out of right triangles instead of equilateral triangles, but I'm probably threatening to make them look more equilateral at some point. But so one of the things that one of my naive reactions here is let me draw a little chord progression here. Well, I guess you could do this chord progression clockwise or counterclockwise. Let's see. And I'm being a little bit ambiguous about which homomorphism we're using, the just intonation or the equal temperament intonation. But yeah, we can think of this as a little chord progression here, right?
I don't know. How is it a chord progression? Looks like a path in pitch space.
No, it's a path through these 6 green triangles. It's just, in the Tonnetz, we're just circling.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We're just getting a period 6 progression of just triads.
Okay.
By just circling around a vertex.
Uh-huh.
And the vertex is some frequency, some note.
Yeah.
So my stupid question is this a familiar chord progression? Or I'm not sure chord progression is the best word here, but is it a familiar chord progression? Like, are there any pieces that use this chord progression? I have a feeling I've thought about this. I'm not sure, but I may have, some years ago or decades ago, I may have thought about this chord progression. It's kind of like, all the just triads that contain a particular note, and you just kind of, do these inversions around it. And also, I wish we did have a better arrangement here where we could just demonstrate this right now. You don't happen to have an example of this right now that we can.
I have something. Let's see. It's not going to be quite the right thing.
I sort of like this chord progression, but
I've never thought about it particularly. There is there's a website that lets you sort of play these things.
That's interesting. I'm also not sure, whether I prefer the chord progression clockwise or counterclockwise.
Uh-huh. Well, just
You can take a
go
stab.
ahead, and I'm going to try to find this damn website.
Sure.
It's gonna take-
So what do you think it lets you do? Basically, just play these triads.
It's not quite it's not quite ideal for what we'd like, which would be to just like be able to click on a triangle and play a triad.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about making a keyboard that's, making Tonnetz into a keyboard or something like that. Which also, right? I mean, there's something. It's definitely interesting, the idea of trying to make this into a keyboard. I mean, that's what I don't know. Is that what we've literally seen people do, is use this Tonnetz as a keyboard? I mean, it's certainly one of the things you can do.
Yeah, that's that. Yes, I showed you some videos of that. They're sort of doing the Poincare dual hexagonal honeycomb, so that you have a key for each note. Yeah, that's a known thing.
So what am I trying to say? You're still working on this?
It's gonna take time.
Oh, I should just go ahead and try.
Yeah, just go ahead and do stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I remarked that I'm interested in this weird chord progression. Let's see. So, okay, I think I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say that if you did actually, treat the Tonnetz as a keyboard, then there's something weird about it, right? Because it's sort of more oriented towards harmony than towards melody, right? I mean, like a piano keyboard, or most instruments, are kind of somewhat oriented towards melody, in the sense that melodies tend to involve neighboring tones, whereas sort of the deliberate intent of the Tonnetz arrangement is to bring out more of these circle of thirds, circle of fifths arrangements, which seem more relevant to harmony than to melody, if there is even any real distinction between harmony and melody. And another thing I'm not clear on here, and I'm not sure to what extent you emphasize this, is there's the issue of taking seriously this actual whole image of these H's. Well, particularly the image of the just H. Like we say, it's this dense thing. And it's dense, but I mean, it's not so dense that it actually includes any notes an octave apart, or any number of octaves apart. Right? So that's kind of weird, right? We're very used to playing on instruments where you can
right
down an octave, and you can't do that here.
Right. Well, one thing is we sort of left out the third dimension of the, if we're looking at like the free abelian group on 2, 3, and 5, here we're taking a certain subgroup of that.
Well, but I thought part of the point was that this triad inversion Coxeter group, or sort of Coxeter group, using all the ways of inverting a triad, so to speak, by keeping one of the intervals and changing the remaining note, and by keeping it as a just triad. That has this effect that it doesn't allow you to go up an octave. It really does give you this two-dimensional lattice rather than a three-dimensional lattice. And a two-dimensional lattice that's densely embedded in the frequency spectrum, but not in a way that lets you, right? So it is, right? It's weird the way you can't go up an octave. But right, you can argue about whether that's a feature or a bug. Yeah, what?
I mean, people often think of this Tonnetz thing as not as describing pitch classes, that is frequencies modulo octaves. So you can take that map H you're talking about and then post compose it with a thing that map it down to the circle.
Sure.
And that's how people might often think about it. So they're not trying to play an octave up. They're not trying to care about octaves. But for an instrument, you're right that it's weird.
Yes, but right. I mean, I think there are certain kinds of musicians who really dislike the idea of modding out by octaves. I mean, it's a very long-standing human thing to do, but right. I mean, I know some musicians, or at least from the way they talk, that they consider that that kind of modding out to be a coarsening that loses the spirit of a lot of music.
Yep. Yeah, certainly if you're trying to, people use it to study certain things about music theory, but if you're trying to write a piece of music or study a piece of music, then it's not.
So I think I've mentioned this guy before, Art Tatum. Have you listened to much Art Tatum?
Not a lot. I know.
You should. Just for fun. But I don't have actual accurate information about him, but I have, apocryphal stories saying that he had very bad eyesight. I mean, some people say that he was blind, but I've seen him in a movie and he was doing a really good job of faking if he really was blind. But because of his poor eyesight, allegedly, he, would not jump up by large intervals. He was a piano player. Did I make that clear? He's a piano player. So it was.
I know him. I know about him. I just haven't heard lots of his stuff.
So, if he wanted to go up an interval, he would do it in an almost continuous way, which, it's a thing on the street keyboard, but, he would treat it almost continuously. Like he would allegedly, he would have lots of notes in between when he was getting from, when he was traversing an interval, when he was traversing a big interval, he would have lots of notes in between, just, so he could know where he was, allegedly. And somehow this Art Tatum style of music reminds me of what we're doing here. When we take seriously the idea, that a major third is different from, I guess we call it a minor sixth. Is that right? The complementary thing would be, that's what it's called, a minor sixth. The complementary
going down a major third. Yep.
Yeah, major means big and minor means small. I think so. So, right, to the extent, right, I mean, one of the things you asked me about was, this idea of, sort of taking seriously or semi-seriously this idea of actually, the Coxeter group aspect of this Tonnetz thing. And particularly when this guy Popov, whose website you mentioned, particularly when he talks about it, it's like he does seem to be almost implicit. He might not be saying Coxeter group, but he's almost implicitly doing that kind of stuff because he's talking about, the inversion of triads in three possible ways. So okay, so let me try to draw a little bit more here. So again, this will make it a little bit more like the way Popov, for example, draws it. these still aren't really equilateral, but they look a little bit closer to equilateral. And right, so right, so I think the way I'm thinking of it here is that, and maybe this is the way that that Popov or other people had it oriented, that the horizontal things are perfect fifth. Well, so let's see.
Yeah.
So what the general trend is that going from left to right is going up.
Yeah.
This
is going up.
Yeah. And right. So
well,
no, that's not quite right. No, that's
sorry,
not
no, well, just forget it.
Yeah, okay.
Going up,
okay.
North east takes you up a major third. Going east takes you up a major fifth.
Okay.
A perfect fifth.
I'm trying to make sure I understand here.
So I think you do.
So I mean, it's like you know, 4, 5, 6. So that's the right side up equilateral triangles are the major triads like that. And okay, so right, so the mine. Okay, so I guess it is. Well, in some sense, it's going from left to right is increasing in frequency.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're doing a major third or a minor third or a perfect fifth, we're at least for those 3 kinds of edges, we're still okay. And so we have, right, we have 3 kinds of inversion here. So let's see. This would be can you figure out what these numbers are here? I mean, but they are inverted, right? I mean, and this picture, it does sort of suggest Coxeter reflection group ideas, right? But part of the point I was trying to make last time was that it's a little bit screwed up. So I mean, so let me try to give you some idea of how this is screwed up, and it's connected with this Kagame idea that we were talking about. So let me try to add a little bit of add a little bit of extra decoration to this. That's going to make this connect this to the Kagame picture. Okay, so let's see. I'll have so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in barycenters of all the edges, and I'm going to put in some color scheme. So, damn, why do you do this? So these major thirds, I'll put them in green. Am I doing this right?
Yep.
And then the perfect fifths, I'll put those in blue. And the minor thirds, I'll put those in red. And I think this is a color scheme that we've actually seen on some website that you found where they had Kagame pictures. But let's see. So this doesn't really have the correct Kagame edges yet, right? So I mean, Let's see, is there a way I can now, can I erase the black? Well, it might be tricky to. No, that's not good enough. Let's see, how do I? So, I'll just pick some random other color here, purple or something, to put in the edges where so they're right there. It's like the missing edges are the things that form the Kagame network. So Kagame, okay, Kagame, if I remember correctly, it's not like Ka, Ga, and Me are the different colors, but rather Kagame is means something like basket or something like that. Is that right? In Japanese?
Yeah, it's a type of basket, I think.
Type of basket weave. Type of basket weave.
Yeah.
And so you're supposed to. I'm putting this in purple for some reason, just because I didn't have another color that I could use. But I should. You can't really see it very well here, so I should draw this separately. Let's draw this what this looks like if you are. If we didn't have the original Tonnetz picture, right? I'm superimposing the Tonnetz picture and the Kagame picture because they're very related. But the picture gets too busy if I just really literally superimpose them. So let me try to draw them in, I guess, not superimposed. So, okay, so let's see, how do I draw this? It's like, okay, those are the blues. Where do the greens go? The greens go. Halfway, okay. Greens like that. And where do the reds go? The reds go like there. I'm doing this right. That looks like, let's see. So, this right?
Yep.
Let me draw them a little bit thicker. And green, thicker. Blue's a little bit thicker. And then the basket weave is like this. By the way, if you could also find that website that has the nice Kagame picture, I wouldn't mind that, but you're not obligated to really do that right this second. But you get the general drift of what it looks like here. Is that right? Let's see. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I was pretty confused earlier about it, but I get it now. I think. I mean, I get that basic idea.
Yeah. I guess I just want to put a little bit more so you can see the general drift of how it goes. That it gives you these, it gives you this grid of hexagons, but the hexagons are not like, right? They have these little triangle gaps between them or something like that. So it's like. Red, red, red. And where are the greens? There. there, etc. And some more of the black. Looks like that. How did they get so it's not supposed to be thick like that? Oh, okay, there it is. Okay. Read that more accurately. Yeah, you can get that's the sense of those how those hexagons fit with each other, but with these gaps, triangular gaps. So what are these? So I'm sort of trying to point out some various flaws here that make it glitchy or problematic to try to connect this to Coxeter group ideas. So, you know, to try to clarify a little bit more about what is the relationship and what's going on here. So, maybe I should, let's see. I mean, right, in the picture on the left, that's, you know, the equilateral triangles are just triads, and the corners are the notes that form the triads. Right? And over on the right-hand side, we're now emphasizing these, you know, things that were edge barycenters, but now we're connecting them by these basket weave lines, which are doing something different. But, you know, obviously the two pictures are, in some sense, conveying the same information, but it's encoded in different ways. And both ways are useful. And so in particular, one of the ways that you can interpret this Kagame picture is that it's showing the free quasi-abelian involutory quandle on three generators. So you could take like three, let me try to emphasize where the generators are. I'll put them, you know, like in the middle or there or something like that. So there's like, that's a generator, and this is a generator, and this is a generator. And everything is just, all the rest of the green and red dots are just obtained by reflecting dots along dots. And, you know, when a dot reflects along a dot, the reflection is the same color as the original reflected, or the one that's being reflected is the same color as the reflection. And that's what this picture is. And see, so an involutory quandle is okay. You know this idea of a quandle. A quandle is like a group, except that all you can do is conjugate instead of multiplying. And then there's an involutory quandle, which is like, it's sort of like you're studying, right? I mean, one way you get quandles is by taking constancy classes in groups. But involutory quandles are just like taking, you know, order 2 constancy classes, constancy classes of reflections in a group. In other words, you just put in this law that says that if you reflect, well, you shouldn't even call it reflection, I guess, unless you've got this involutory law that says that if you do it twice, you get back to the same thing. Otherwise, you call it conjugation, I guess, in a general quandle. But in an involutory quandle, you can call it reflection. And if you want to understand what the general free involutory quandle is like on these generators, it's very similar to this picture, except that when you go around one of these hexagons, you don't close up. So you like have to keep track of the number of times you've gone around one of these hexagonal circles. And that's what would be the free involutory quandle on those three generators. I mean, that's a very informal description of it, but the point is that it's finer. You know, you'd have to put in like a third dimension or something like that to to keep track of the whole free involutory quandle.
So that's a hexagon of intervals. Wait.
That's a hexagon of intervals.
Yeah.
No, let's see. Yes, the colors are, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Well, but also you can also say it's a hexagon of the color dots are inversions. And this is connected to what you were saying last time about how there's all these games that you can play about the right. What do we call that? What do you call that? When the right multiplications versus the left multiplications, and they commute with each other, but they give sort of copies of the same group, but they have right. I mean, one of the classic examples is in physics, right? When physicists talk about active transformations versus passive transformations.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the kind of description we're talking about here. So you were describing how the, depending on which way you think of it, you can think of the PRL transformations as the active ones and the IT ones. IT stands for inversion and transposition. And you can think of those as the whatever the other one was. Did I say whichever ones? If we thought about it, we might be able to figure out which ones are the active ones and which ones are the passive ones in from a physicist's intuitive viewpoint. But I'm not sure I'm capable of figuring that out right now at the moment. I just know that active and passive are the two opposite handednesses here. So that issue is sort of coming up here in interpreting these pictures, because is it right? I mean, you just suggested thinking of these colored dots as intervals, and that's a correct way to think of it. But I was suggesting to think of them as these inversions. So it's right. I guess the idea is that you can just, when you have an interval, you can invert with respect to it. But it does get a little bit confusing when you're trying to figure out whether you're doing an active transformation or a passive transformation there. Hopefully we won't get too badly confused when we think about that.
So when you invert about an interval, you just switch its two notes, and then you flip the line upside down.
I think that's right. So let's think about how, let's think about how what that PR and L. So where are PR and L? So we have like don't tell me. Let me see if I can figure it out. So P stands for parallel. So I think it looks like blue is parallel. Let me draw the triangle here. Sorry. So we have, I think that's a P thing. And I'm trying to figure out which one is R and which one is L. Right, that'll be annoying if L is on the right and R is on the left.
I think they are. I don't want, yeah. I know.
Let's see. So L stands for leading, and R stands for relative. Right. So relative minor. So right, if you go, that's supposed to be a major triad, and then you go down to the relative minor. So let's see. That's. I think that is R over there. So what color is that? That is green is R. And L is for leading. And I think that would be over there. So that would be, so we've got these other triads. So, the one in the middle is this major thing. And then the R triad, its reflections, R reflections, that's the relative minor. And the parallel minor is where you just, flatten the third. So it's, I think. And then the leading thing is where you go. Let's see. So again, we start with.
I can't hear you whistling or whatever you're doing. It's funny. I can hear your voice fine, but I can't hear you.
That's weird. It's just not adapted to
it may be like
those frequencies or something like
adapted
that.
to blot that out. Yeah. You hear that?
Well, first of all, can you whistle? Can you do it?
I can whistle, but I can't whistle what you want to whistle, unfortunately.
But just whistle anything. I just want to see if I can hear you. Yeah, it just seems like Zoom is not designed to transmit whistling.
Did you not hear it at all?
Pretty much not at all.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, so it's just designed to block that out.
I
was once in some weird Zoom meeting where, because my voice, I was giving a talk, but my voice was getting like duplicated somehow because of lots of people having computers doing things. Yes. And so Zoom started interpreting my voice as the background that it needed to adaptively learn how to block out. So my voice got more and more blurred out until it disappeared.
Well, so I mean, this makes it all the more, makes me want to have, some way that we can easily, just create silly sounds when we're trying to demonstrate stuff here. It's on
that may also explain why you couldn't hear it very well when I was playing music in other methods.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that anti-musical nature of the Zoom.
Yeah. I don't know the details, but yeah. So right. I was trying, right. And the intent of my whistling was as a way of trying to get you to check that I was doing it the right way. So I was trying to say this would be like all right. Now I'll try to put.
I bet if you sing, it'll be okay.
Oh, okay. I'll try that. Somehow I'm more nervous about singing than I am about whistling. Okay. So okay. So the major triad in the middle is la la. I can't do it all. La. I did have a sore throat very recently. La la. I have had a sore throat.
The first two are great. Yeah.
It's really hard for me to do. Whistling is so much easier. La 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 la. Okay, that's good enough. La 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 la. That's the major triad in the middle, and then the relative minor is la 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 la. And so that's the R over on the left, and the leading thing over on the right, that's la 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 la. If I did that right.
So you stuck an extra note on that was higher than the three.
Yeah, and that's the major seventh thing. That's the leading tone towards the.
Okay. Oh, now I finally get why it's called that. Okay, no one ever explained it. Yeah.
Well, don't trust me on the explanation, but I think.
Well, at least that makes. That's. Let's see. I hadn't even checked.
I think it has something to do with the fact that major seventh that you're, is becoming the new top note of the triad.
But anyway, the major seventh you're saying is the minor third above the fifth. Yeah.
Yes. Again, my theory about why it's called leading made sense in my mind when I was saying it, and maybe we're right, but
I just. Yeah. I don't know, but I just know that the leading tone is the major seventh for all sorts of good musical reasons.
Okay.
Stick with that.
So la la la, and then the P, the parallel minor is hard for me to do. So, like I say, I call it the Zarathustra thing. It's the la 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 la. That that you know what I mean in that thus spake Zarathustra, the 2001 thing, that da-da whatever. That's that thing. It's 25 to 24, I think, or something like that, in the just intonation. And okay, so we've got this, and by the way, what time should we aim to wrap up here?
We can go on longer if you want than normal. Then that is later.
Yeah, right. Okay, so but let me give me some idea when we should try to aim to quit. Like with like a 10-minute,
like half an hour plus 5 minutes, so like half an hour
okay,
later than usual.
Okay, sure. Okay, let's aim for that. So right. So now let's try to picture these inversions over on the right hand picture, right? I mean, see it over in this Tonnetz picture, right? I'm referring to these two different pictures, these two related pictures. That's the Tonnetz picture and the Kagame picture. They're very related, but in the Tonnetz picture, it sort of misleadingly tricks you into thinking that this is like a Coxeter reflection group. I mean, it may be a Coxeter reflection group in some funny way, but the Tonnetz picture is misleading in a way, because let's try to think about what these inversions do over in the Kagame picture. Okay. So in the Kagame picture, what the inversion is doing here is let's for example do the inversion that's associated with this thing right here. So that that inversion. So what that is doing, that's just saying, if you think about how this is working, that's saying take that big green dot and have that be the origin of the plane, and simply do inversion. Yeah, I mean, or negative-ish, negative vision, or whatever you call it. So in particular, it is a kind of reflection, but it's not a reflection across a one-dimensional mirror. And that's right. The Tonnetz picture tricks me in a misleading way. It makes me think at first, oh, we're going to have reflection across a one-dimensional mirror, but it's really not reflection across a one-dimensional mirror. It's reflection across a zero-dimensional mirror, right? And am I saying this? So in particular, right? It's not orientation reversing.
Yeah.
Mirror inversion, in the sense of reflecting across a one-dimensional mirror, that is orientation reversing. But here we're doing the other thing, just reflecting across a point, which is this orientation preserving thing. It's just like taking the negative of a complex number or something like that, but with respect to a particular origin. And so I think you can see better, right, that this is not like the mirror inversion, but it's more like the negative of a complex number, because right, like think about how we reflect from the original triad to P over in the Tonnetz picture. Okay, so I'm pointing to the P over here, where we have the original triad in the middle, original major triad in the middle, and it inverts to a minor triad P below there. And that feels like you're doing mirror inversion, but you're not doing mirror inversion, right? Because you can see that it's one of these trick mirrors that reflects things so that they're not inverted, right? I mean, you see what I'm saying? The green thing is over on the other side. So it's, yeah, it's one of those, right? It's the difference between looking in a mirror, whereas if I'm looking in a, like, right, which way am I doing it right now on Zoom? Am I
You can adjust on Zoom how you look, actually. There's
right,
a
right. And I think I have it set for mirror inversion at the moment, but that's not what's going on here with this Kagame thing here. So do you see what I'm saying? There really is something like a Coxeter group. There's something like a Coxeter group going on here, but it's very confusingly misleading because of the fact that, you know, this flipping in the Tonnetz picture is not mirror inversion. It's this, you know, it's this other kind of trick mirror inversion that doesn't change orientation.
By the way, I wanted to interrupt you at some point and ask, what is what's this extra quasi-abelian relation you're sticking on your quandle? Can you just write it down in terms of, you sort of said it, but
I don't know if let me see. What I want to say is that, so I'm trying to remember, okay, let me see if I can remember the terminology here. So when you have an inviatory quandle, you have the inversions, which are, you know, conjugating by a particular element. But if you compose two of those, then you get those things that are called, don't tell me, right? Don't tell me, what are they called? There's a name for this. Oh, it's reflection and, do you know what I'm trying to think of? What?
Transvection?
Transvection, yes. That's annoying that I couldn't think of it. But yes, transvection, that's right. So, you know, yes, in an inviatory quandle, you have these transvections that are the composites of reflections. And the thing that I called, I don't know what the real name is. I'm just calling it quasi-abelian for a moment, because the point is that the transvections commute with each other.
Oh, that's nice.
And basically the reasons they're commuting with each other is because in this musical Tonnetz, these transvections are basically the transpositions. You know, that's why we're ending up getting this dihedral thing. You know, that's all there is these transpositions and these inversions. And of course, so somehow transposition and transvection are synonyms in this funny context. But, you know, because they're transpositions, the transvections are commuting with each other. So, you know, right? So one of the things this is saying is that, you know, depending on how you think of it, this is not really a Coxeter group, because, you know, this PRL group is not a Coxeter group, at least not in my understanding of the usual definition of Coxeter group, because, you know, it's supposed to be freely generated by some reflections, with the only extra relations being constraints on the order of the transvections. Whereas, you know, not just orders of the transvections, but orders of the sort of generating transvections. I mean, I guess that amounts to just orders of the transvections, but somehow you think of it as, you know, when you draw a Coxeter diagram, you see those little labels on the edges. Those are telling you the orders of the transvections connecting the two reflections. Whereas here we're having, you know, some non-Coxeter relations, in my understanding, that they are, you know, it's putting this extra thing saying that the transvections are commuting with each other. That the transvections are commuting with each other because they're basically transpositions. You know, so that's why you're getting this dihedral thing, right? So, right, in some sense, the dihedral thing is sort of not very far from abelian. You know, so that's sort of what I meant by quasi-abelian. It's just, you know, a semi-direct product of these some sort of reflections acting on very sensible sort of reflections, maybe just a Z mod 2 or something, acting on the transpositions. And again, this is, I think we've sort of been convincing ourselves that we have the two different H's here, and a lot of things we're saying work for both H's. You were hinting at this last week, but I think it's more clearer in the conceptual pictures that we're developing here that, the traditional 12-tone equal temperament, pitch class PRL group, that is dihedral, finite dihedral with 24 element finite dihedral. But for this funny, well, maybe it's not funny, but this just one that we're developing here, we're also getting a dihedral group. Is that right? Yeah, I think we're also getting a dihedral group, or something very much like a dihedral group. But I guess I might have to look up the definition of dihedral. But it's something very much like a dihedral group. It's got these reflections and it's got these transpositions.
So you'd also get that for the equal temperament, right? I mean,
that's what I was trying to say. Did I?
Oh, you said just at some point. You just
yes, but before that, I said for the equal temperament that we're getting this finite dihedral group.
No, but I mean, there's an equal temperament that gives you an infinite. There is an infinite.
Oh, yes, there is. But am I saying this right?
You can reduce it down to it. You're saying you are able in that case to reduce it down to a finite group.
Yes.
But for some reason,
but now I'm getting confused about what do I mean when I say that you can't do that in the just case. I might have to stop and think about what that means. But right, there's certainly if you want to do it with respect to the traditional octaves, then it's not going to work. But so okay. So in the remaining time here, one of the things I want to do here is just to, for whatever purpose, show what happens when we do, forcibly interpret this as a Coxeter group. I mean, I guess the point is that it'll be a quotient of a Coxeter group. So let me try to draw the next picture, which should be a sort of familiar picture, and one that we've talked about before in connection when we were talking about Kagame ideas in connection with the abelian ones of Grothendieck's designs, children's designs. So let me try to draw some hopefully rather familiar picture. So we have sorry, that's not the right way. It's supposed to be like a circle. And then we have something like this, and like this, and like this, and like this. So here I'm drawing the thing without the, right? This is the Coxeter group that you get. Well, so first of all, right, we're not having finite order of the transvections here, right? Because the transvections are supposed to be like, I mean, I guess you're telling me that in that 12-tone thing, in the equal temperament thing, when you do fold it up, when you do wrap it up, that you do get, yeah, there must be some way to think of that as a Coxeter group.
Yep.
Except, wait a minute, that one is not, I'm getting confused about whether that's a Coxeter group either. I mean, it is a Coxeter group, but with two dots.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So, but maybe there's some other way in which it's a quotient of a 3-dot Coxeter group. But I shouldn't worry about that right now. But there's this thing right here. Now, and again, there's multiple ways of thinking of this as a Coxeter group. There's all sorts of tricks that are going on here. But one way we can think of it is that the Coxeter diagram looks like, there's green, and there's blue, and there's red, and the numerical labels on the edges are, Does it make sense? I guess we call it infinity or something like that. That these transvections are the transvections that you get by composing the reflections are infinite order. And so I mean, right, there are different conventions and tricks you can use with Coxeter groups. You can color the vertexes, or you can color the edges, or you can color both. It looks like I already drew the edges in black, so I guess I would have preferred to put those in color, but I'll put the vertexes in color. So let's see, I'll have like green there, blue, sorry. Blue there, red there. And right, so right, I mean, part of the point is that all these vertexes, you might think that they're all the same kind of, but it's actually in this, from this Coxeter group point of view, they're actually three different colors. So what color am I doing here? Yeah, that's blue. And this is what, green over here?
Yep.
And where's some more greens? There's like a green over there, and there's a green over there. And where's some more blues? Where, right? Each triangle has all three colors.
Yep.
So red and green, so that's a blue right there. And then what colors are these? These are blue. These must be reds over here. It keeps on going forever. So, right, this gets confusing. You know, what's the connection between the Tonnetz picture, the Kagame picture, and the Escher picture? So right. So one of the relationships, right, is that the Escher thing is again non-abelian. You know, it's given this hyperbolic group. So you know, when it maps to the other two, it maps in a coarsening way. So right, let me try to give some idea of how this is working. So how do we do this? We've got like yes, okay, well, okay. So I think I've got this right. I think we're going to think of these dots in this picture as being like, so confusing. I think they are like the notes in the chord, the notes in the triads. Does that make sense? So I mean, like, let's see. So let's say this is like so what did you have? You had something like am I doing this? Yeah, I might not be using a consistent. I might have slight inconsistencies here in which choices of colors I'm using here. But I think one way we could have it is you had like 1 and then 5/4 and then 3/2.
And what are those labels labeling the vertices of that triangle?
Oh yeah, they actually, I guess they're actually supposed to be out here. So it should be like 1 out of there and 5/4 over there and 3/2 over there. And this is like, right, this is like completely different labeling than the labeling we use when we're drawing that Stern-Brokow tree.
Okay, darn.
Well, I'm sure it's related in a funny way, but let's not worry about that too much right now. I mean, it's very different in a way, but you know, there's of course there are relationships, but so I think I'm doing this right, and
Well, so hold on. I mean, so
yeah,
I don't
it's
even
very
know what
confusing.
right
Go ahead,
means.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like that, when you label one of the next vertices after those three, so you just do the P, R, or L transformation
yes,
to the triad, and you figure out what that new note
yes, and
is.
let's try to figure out at least one of these, okay? Just for so let's see. So let's see this la 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 la. So maybe this is 6/5. Is that right? So this is like don't tell me relative minor, I think.
Uh-huh.
And let's see, let's see, 5 to the fourth, that's like 25 to the 20th. This would, I guess, be 24 20ths. Yeah, so okay, let me put the 6/5 out there. And this is 25 20ths, so this should be 24 20ths, because it's like again, it's the Zarathustra thing, the parallel minor. So yeah, this is parallel. And this is leading. Okay, it must be. Let's see. But I'm just trying to figure out the number here. I hope I'm getting this somewhat close to right. I'm hoping that I don't have everything completely backwards and upside down. So 24 over 20 is the same as 12 over 10. It's the same as 6 over 5.
Why do you have 6/5 twice? You just had 6/5 a second ago.
But I think that might be right.
Really?
I think that might be right.
I don't know.
No, that's good. This is the coarsening, the abelian coarsening. This is, you know, where right that the transpositions commute with each other. The transvections commute with each other. So right. So what I'm trying to say is that remember there was this. So there's this little 6-chord progression I like. These made out of just triads that you get by just fixing a note and circling around it, kind of like a peg leg nailed to the floor or something like that. Here we're doing that, but like again, I'm like keeping this note here. Sorry.
No.
I'm trying to keep this note fixed, and if it right is so, what am I trying to say? If I start out with this one, let's say right here. Let's say right here. That was supposed to be purple. Didn't come out purple. Purple. I'm just trying to show all the chords I get by keeping this note. So it's like this one, and this one, and then the next one, and this one, and this one. So it's like this infinity gon thing that I'm drawing here. Right? It goes. But the point is that those are cycling. Those are period 6. So instead of being an infinity gon, it's a 6. But boy, this has me confused now, because isn't there some famous quotient? Oh, I guess. Right. I was getting confused with this. Right. There's this other related Coxeter group. There are intrinsically confusing things here, and what is the other one? The other one has, I guess it's like there's the invisible one that you don't even draw. So what number is that?
Two.
2. Okay, so you don't draw the 2, and you don't even put there's a visible one, but with an invisible label, which is 3, and then there's the one with the infinity or something like that. And there's a funny barycentric subdivision relationship between these two or something like that. I don't know. I was just thinking that this idea where the infinity gons become 6 gons, that's reminding me of some famous congruence group or something of this Coxeter group or something like that.
I mean, so you should be getting like a map from this hyperbolic plane down to some modular curve, right? It's like,
yes, but that's what it sounded like I was doing. But I'm worried that because I'm conflating these two different but related Coxeter groups, that I might be doing some other funny thing. But because it's the idea, it almost sounds like I'm claiming that there's some one of these SL2s that is abelian or dihedral. I guess maybe it really is dihedral or something like that. But anyway, I don't want to worry about that too much. But I just want to say that, right? I mean, so we really are getting different frequencies and different triads overrepresented in this Escher picture. Because we're drawing the non-abelian thing. So I guess, so this picture here, I call it the Escher picture, but it's also called the Coxeter complex, right? I mean, the Coxeter complex for this particular hyperbolic Coxeter group. And so one of the things I want to do here, one of the things I'm sort of trying to draw attention to here is that there's again, I don't know how the standard terminology works, but the way I use the terminology, there's a kind of distinction between what I call a Coxeter complex versus a Coxeter tiling. Sorry. Coxeter tiling. So what I call a Coxeter tiling is any way of wrapping up the Coxeter complex in a combinatorial way. But that still has, the color consistency condition. And basically that corresponds to taking any subgroup of the Coxeter group, and even not necessarily a normal subgroup, and modding out by it. It's taking the action, taking the cosets. So the cosets of a not necessarily normal subgroup, and that gives you the tiles of this Coxeter tiling. Now, if that subgroup that you're modding out by, if that subgroup that you're taking the cosets of, if that is a normal subgroup, then you're getting this very regular Coxeter tiling. And regular here directly corresponds to being a normal subgroup. So regular and normal kind of. So one example that we can do is we can take, this one of the subgroups that we can use to wrap things up here, to mod out by here, is we can use the commutator subgroup of the transvections. And that is some funny looking subgroup. We've tried to do this before, right? I mean, I've never successfully drawn a good picture of the resulting combinatorial wrapping that you get, because I think it's very crinkly or something like that. I think it's still non-compact, but it's like trying to be high genus or something like that. I mean, and the reason I tried to draw this before was because I was trying to draw the free abelian design in Grothendieck's sense of children's designs, because I was trying to understand Grothendieck's designs in the context of, Galois theory. In particular, Grothendieck's designs sort of blends together geometric Galois theory and arithmetic Galois theory in a very interesting way. And that's one of the things that we've been thinking about. And that's actually supposed to be the topic that I was supposed to be getting back to for the second half of today, but actually it won't happen until next time we meet or something like that.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is that, well, okay, there's several things I'm saying here. They're all strange, but I am saying them. So like, if you try to make this Tonnetz, if you try to reinterpret it as a Coxeter thing, it's not really giving you a Coxeter complex, but it is giving you a Coxeter tiling. But it's a very peculiar Coxeter tiling. You know, one that I've never quite succeeded in finding a good way to draw it because it's so peculiar. Because you know I mean, right? If you try to figure out where the commutators of all the transvections are here, they are located in this picture in a funny way that makes it awkward for me, at least, to try to wrap this up in a visually appreciable combinatorial way.
And when you do wrap it up, it's still an infinite thing. And
it is still an infinite thing. Yes, it is. You know, it is combinatorially equivalent to this infinite Tonnetz, or this infinite Kagame thing. But the abelian thing. And like I say, the non-abelian, this non-abelian thing is actually secretly equivalent to the thing that I'm sort of calling, in a sense, it's the universal cover of this Kagame thing, in the sense that, you unwrap when you go around a hexagon. So you sort of unwrap all the hexagons into these infinite spirals or something like that.
So just to be, I know this must be true, but I have to say it's in just intonation, when you go around that hexagon, go around those, you really do get back to exactly the same.
You get it back to exactly the same thing. Yes.
There's these other famous things in Justination where you don't get back to where you started from.
Right. And I was trying to think of some interesting musical interpretation of, this non-abelian thing where you don't get back when you go around that hexagon, but I couldn't really think of anything.
That's what's confusing me.
I mean, there's so many confusing things here. I mean, I'm deliberately doing some very confusing things here, but you sort of forced me into it, and it is sort of fun getting ourselves confused some of the time.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And one of the mysterious things here is, there is this confusing thing that's going on here, but the funny thing about it is that this isn't the first time that we've run into this same confusion. We ran into this same confusion when we were thinking about this seemingly completely different subject, the subject of Grothendieck's children's designs in the abelian case. And that led us into this infinite dihedral group. It is, so again, it's right. It's kind of funny. We were like chasing some very visual ideas of Grothendieck's. That's why I call them children's designs, because you could appreciate them in a very childlike way, as they're visual things that you can appreciate. But on the other hand, it's peculiar that when you try to make them abelian, which makes it sound like it's the easiest thing in the world, it actually ends up making the designs look very strange in a way. These infinitely crinkly designs or something like that. But I guess I'm saying that there's some bizarre cryptomorphism between the naive visuals of the abelian case of Grothendieck's designs, the children's designs, these little pictures. So there's some sort of bizarre cryptomorphism between the visual and the musical here.
That's right. Yeah. So the one that's easy to see is hard to hear, and the one that's hard to see is.
I think it's more like Is that? Let me think about that. Let me think about what you're saying.
Because on the one hand, you were saying like, oh, I wish there's no good musical interpretation of what happens if you don't get back to where you started from.
I guess you're right.
And then
Yeah,
on the other
so
hand, there's no good visual interpretation of what happens if you do get around back to where you
I
started.
guess you're right. I guess you're right. So what you're saying is that this thing is this Escher thing is really sort of attractive in a visual way. I mean, even if, even a child can, you have to draw an infinite picture, but nevertheless, it's a childlike, it's a picture that you can appreciate in a childlike way when you stare at one of Escher's designs, hyperbolic tiling designs. Whereas, as you're pointing out now, if I understand what you're saying, and I think I understand what you're saying, if you want to do the musical thing, then it's more what you really want is something more like the Tonnetz picture, but perhaps also, I guess, it's a matter of taste. Do you prefer the Tonnetz picture or do you prefer the Kagame picture? They are very directly related, and they're both very abelian. And so they are right. I mean, in a way, it seems like it does seem like the Coxeter viewpoint is a little bit of overkill for the musical case, because all you're really getting is this sort of dihedral group. So all it's really got is transpositions and inversions. So yeah, so well, yeah, okay. Now we really are running out of time, just about at the right moment, I think. So I mean, there's probably some punchlines to be saying, but I guess the punchline is just that it's fun playing around with these crazy ideas, but it's not as though we actually are reaching some conclusion here. It's just it's fun playing around with these things. That's the conclusion.
Okay.
And it's fun. It's fun trying to play these synesthesia games where right. That's one of the things we're doing here is we're trying to find out what happens when you play one of these children's designs as a musical piece, or vice versa, when you try to look at one of these musical pieces as a children's design. And funny things happen when you try to do that.
Yep.
So I'm blaming all this on you because I think it was this really fun idea. What?
Yep. I just asked you to trying to come up with some cool relationship between these things.
Right. And there's all sorts of further games that we can play with this, and we probably should do more of this, but it does make me want to have more ways that we can actually play keyboards and stuff as we're talking. Anyway, let's
I have never found that web page that's sort of almost does that. It's annoying. You probably couldn't hear it anyway because of this stupid feature of Zoom that blocks it out. So unless only the fact that you sing fairly out of tune is and quavery that let's be heard, or it sounds like, I don't know, maybe not. Probably
it is fun. It is fun trying to figure out what it is doing that filters out whistling. It's like
I think it's fine.
Filtering out any single frequency or something. I don't know.
Linear signal processing.
That's what it sounds like, according to what I said, but I don't know if that makes any sense. All right. I'll see you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye.